Welcome back. For those of you who just joined, welcome to the Stanford Neurodiversity Summit. We'd like to let you know that all the sessions are recorded and transcribed. Please check our summit website for YouTube videos of the previous days of the conference. For those who have registered today and have not received our Zoom webinar links, please utilize our YouTube live stream on our summit website. All questions from the audience will be submitted through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. The moderators will try to cover as many questions as possible. And after this presentation at between 12 and 1, there is going to be networking sessions for those that have signed up. Please check your emails to make sure that you are getting the right directions for joining. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Sarah Rankin. Dr. Rankin graduated with first-class honors from King's College London, earned her PhD in pharmacology also from King's College, and then postdoc training at UC San Diego and Cancer Research UK London. She then joined Imperial College London in 1995, and she is now a professor in leukocyte and stem cell biology in the Faculty of Medicine. Sarah is a world leader in the field of regenerative pharmacology, inventing drugs to help the body repair itself after injury. She is also involved in many interdisciplinary collaborative projects with physicists, material scientists, and engineers investigating blast injuries, cartilage repair, and the immune response to biomaterials. Throughout her career, she has been actively involved in public engagement and is the National Heart and Lung Institute's lead for public engagement. In this capacity, she has been the lead scientist in a number of high-profile collaborative projects with artists like the Heart and Lung Repair Shop and Palaces. Professor Rankin is neurodiverse, and in recent years have been working on a project 2EM Power UK to make STEM education in schools and higher education accessible for students with specific learning disorders. Professor Rankin's keynote presentation is titled Neurodiversity in STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Medicine, Education, and Careers. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rankin.
Light. Great. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. Well, thank you so much for the invite. It's really a great honor for me to be here today. Most of you will not know me because I am new person on the block, if you like, because this isn't my area of expertise, but it is my lived experience. And this is really in part where I'm coming from. So I am a professor, and hence I'm sitting here as the sort of embodiment of I've lost that word. So there you go, proof that I am dyslexic and dyspraxic. Anyway, I'm moving swiftly on. So as I say, not an expert in neurodiversity and as trained as a pharmacologist. But what I have done throughout my whole career is to be very passionate about outreach. And this is trying to encourage other young people to get into STEM careers. And originally, when I started out, as one of the very few women in science, in terms of in our department, there were no female professors. And so one of the things that I have been doing throughout my career is trying to inspire people by doing really interesting and inspiring outreach activities. And this was just showing you here our sort of own bake-off event that we did, and obviously talking to lots of girls. Now, things have changed since then. We now have a department that has over 50% women, and we have lots of girls doing STEM subjects, maybe not as many as we want, but still things have changed dramatically over the last sort of 25 years, certainly, that I have been at Imperial. And we have done that through our outreach programs, but also by changing things from within and changing the culture of the workplace and making it more inviting for young women. And so I've been through this process once. And now when I'm thinking about that in terms of neurodiversity, I'm trying to do the same sort of process, but this time I know what I need to do. And so I'm hoping that I can sort of really accelerate that change. And also, I am really confident that a lot of the changes that we need to make are not as dramatic as they were when we were trying to get women into science. So we don't have to, for example, build a nursery. So one of the things that I am known for is my creativity, and I bring that to all aspects of my work, whether it be the research or the outreach. And these are some of the outreach projects that I have worked on. And they don't look probably to you very sciencey, but there is science underneath that. And so this is what we do. We sort of attract people into interesting looking events and projects, and then we talk to them about science and stem cells, etc. So neurodiversity and science. If I show you this picture, you can see lots of sort of old famous people who it's generally believed that these guys were all neurodiverse. A lot of them were indeed autistic. And that's great. But the problem is we don't have so many of those people, those sort of role models today. So we had Steve Jobs, we had Stephen Hawking, who were both known to be dyslexic. And we know that they had huge impact in their fields of science and STEM. We also know some other people, if we look today and we think, okay, if I'm looking for dyslexic scientists or scientists with ADHD or that are autistic, I can find a few people on the internet, but it's very difficult. And this is my first issue that I have, that there are relatively few neurodiverse STEM role models. And when we were talking about getting girls into STEM, the way we did it was we went as women into schools, and as young, you know, when I was in my 20s, I was going into schools and trying to encourage more girls to get into science. And so we need those younger role models to be trying to entice neurodiverse students into science, because there's this saying, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So I have, there are a lot of problems. There are very few neurodiverse STEM role models. That's my first issue. There's also this issue that we know, as you'll all be very aware, that many students fail in school. And I'm not going to read this out. And if you haven't got the time to be able to read the whole thing now, do look it up, because this is John Gordon's one of his school reports back from 1949. And if you imagine, in 1964, he was actually in California doing research, and it's that research that led him to get the Nobel Prize. So he was pretty much, his teachers told him he was never going to be a scientist. Similar thing with this person. This is Dame Sally Davis, who was our chief medical officer in the UK. She didn't get past her 11 plus. She couldn't get into grammar school in the UK, but she clearly went on and succeeded. This is a very common thing you all be aware of. School is not a good place for neurodiverse people. And so these neurodiverse students, we know, are not thriving in schools. They might be surviving. Some of them aren't surviving. ADHD pupils very often get excluded. Autistic students very often bullied, end up being home educated. So, and then the other students, people like myself, high ability students, maybe with dyslexia, dyspraxia, some sort of combination of neurodiversity, they're underperforming. And this is because the teaching is inaccessible for us. We're not being taught in the way we need to be taught. And the assessments are a nightmare. So I could go on forever and a day about problems at school, but I realise that this is going to be the subject of further debate later today. But I think these are things that we all recognise. And we do have issues in the UK because our science teachers aren't taught about neurodiversity. And so they're not even aware that they should be teaching these students in a different way. But I think my main problem with what's going on in schools is this, and it's the fact that we are trying to not only teach those students in, a way that isn't great for them, but we are also not assessing their strengths. And we've heard a lot of talk in this conference about what the strengths of those students are. And indeed, when we are doing the sort of exams that we are doing in the UK, certainly, we are still back in the dark ages where we are assessing primarily ability to recall. So in science subjects in particular, ability to recall, equations and lots of sort of information, all the human anatomy. Why do we need to be able to recall it when we've all got one of these? It's not that important anymore. We are not assessing a student's ability to be creative and innovative. And when I showed you all those amazing scientists, that's what they did. They were inventors. So one of the things we know is neurodiverse students are performing in STEM subjects, so in science subjects at GCSE, which in the UK, these are taken at 16. And I won't go into this details, but this was a huge study covering over a longitudinal study of over 1,000 students. And what it clearly showed was that students that had a specific learning difference, but were unstatemented. So these are students that, there isn't even the funding to get them a statement because they're not deemed bad enough. They don't have a learning disability. They are high ability students, but they have a neurodiversity. These students, there's a massive gap, attainment gap in how they are achieving. And so this is a real issue. So the other thing is that teachers are not really encouraging these students to do STEM subjects. And in fact, my son, who's dyslexic, was told he couldn't do triple science. They advised him not to do science because it was, too hard. And because they're naturally creative, they are being sort of channeled into these creative industries. And we know that, there are amazing people, amazingly creative people that are successful. You know, these are all dyslexic people that have been incredibly successful in the arts, and that's great. Likewise, we know of all these sort of dyslexic people that are, you know, successful as architects. But we also know that there are a lot of students that leave school, and this is again comes back to this, the fact that school can be very problematic, and students can get very disenchanted, etc., if I'm putting it politely. And so they will leave school, but then they will go on to do amazing things, and they will be successful as entrepreneurs. Now, one of the things within the science community, and when we're teaching STEM nowadays, certainly at Imperial, we're very much into entrepreneurship. Young people generally are very much into entrepreneurship, and inventing things and being an entrepreneur go hand in hand. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm desperate to get more neurodiverse people into science. So neurodiverse people being encouraged into the creative industry, some of them leaving education. And for all these reasons I've mentioned and have been mentioned before in this conference, neurodiverse students can leave school lacking self-efficacy and lacking the sort of confidence that they could be good at things, particularly good at STEM. And the result is that we have relatively low numbers of neurodiverse students studying STEM subjects in higher education. And if I just look at Imperial, we have less than 8% students looking at all types of disability. This is the number of students that we have at Imperial. Whereas if we go round the corner to our colleagues at the Royal College of Art, they have 29% of their students that are dyslexic. And they're very proud of that because they know they have managed to capture all these creative students and creative minds. And I'm jealous of them because we need them at Imperial. We need these creative, inventive students, because if we don't have them, you know, if you look at all the inventions that these people have produced, you know, we've gone from, you know, the electric light bulb, planes, you know, computers, PCs, Microsoft, Macintosh, everything you can think of. You know, even, you know, think about Cavendish. You know, he invented chemistry and physics, you know, just two minor things in his lifetime. And then we've got Louis Pasteur over here, and we're living in the time of COVID. You know, this is the guy that invented vaccination. We cannot afford to let neurodiverse students that are interested or have a passion for science not be entered into, not be sort of feel that they have a place within higher education to study science. And so we need to think about what those barriers are and try and really sort of knock them down. And I'm really confident that, you know, if we think about, you know, all the strengths that people have been talking about, and if I think about, you know, all these great scientists, you know, why is it that neurodiverse people can be really good scientists and amazing scientists, some of them? Well, because of creativity, innovation, you know, big picture thinking, ability to link disparate ideas. One of the things you noticed at the beginning, Lawrence was mentioning, I do a lot of interdisciplinary work. I find it very easy to work, whether it's with artists or with physicists or material scientists. That comes very naturally. And I think this sort of also this silenization of the subjects is something that we really have to get away from if we want to move forward and be much more creative and disruptive with technologies. And so there are lots of really important core skills that neurodiverse people have. thinking about ADHD, that ability to hyper-focus and complete tasks. And then with autism, the attention to detail, pattern recognition, these are, and also the sense of really wanting to go for the truth and being really trustworthy. I mean, these are really critical and important characteristics for scientists. And I think we've heard previously, they also, all these skills align with what people consider 21st century career skills. And so that's very much, and I'm sure people have mentioned this before, how everybody, that's neurodiverse has this spiky profile, and this could be me. So yeah, I have a problem reading. I read slowly. This isn't a problem for me as a scientist, because actually I want to read the detail. And sometimes, so reading slowly is actually a good thing. Time management and those sort of things, yes, they are challenging, but there are ways, as we all know, of dealing with that. And technologies are really helping us there with that, with new apps, etc. So we're moving now. We're actually in the fourth revolution. We've all heard about the fourth revolution. This is artificial intelligence. And this is where it gets really interesting for me, because what I've realized in talking to businesses that are really sort of picking up on this whole thing about neurodiversity, and lots of those have been mentioned already, but businesses are really thinking, okay, artificial intelligence is what's going to replace straight line thinkers. So what we need actually is some now sort of the more complex, non-linear thinkers. And we need these people because we have all these technologies, and we now need people to come and innovate with it and be creative. And so this is why there are a lot of STEM businesses that really want to recruit these complex non-linear thinkers. So it's not just, having the autistic students, but it's also having people that are dyslexic or have ADHD or dyspraxia. And these are just businesses that I've worked with in particular that have an interest in that. And we know many of this. And classically, the one, GCHQ, I mean, we all know about Alan Turing being autistic, and his fantastic contribution to science and everything. And GCHQ now, their recruitment process is such that they have recruited, and in their workforce, they have 25% of their employees are dyslexic because they are amazing problem solvers. So this is the message that I really want to get to young people, that if you are neurodiverse, then you do have a future in STEM, and it's now. Now could be your time. You could be incredibly creative and a scientist and have entrepreneurship skills. And these companies are looking for you. And there's lots of organizations, not-for-profits, etc., that can work with you to help link you up with those jobs. So this term neurodiversity, I guess for me as a scientist, I have a little bit of an issue because it's biodiversity, neurodiversity, it covers, if you talk about biodiversity, you're covering everything. Likewise, neurodiversity. The one that I like, and I think it was an American one, is this twice exceptional term, or the 2E term. And I guess I like 2E because that seems a bit scientific to me. So someone who has high ability with a learning difference is thought to be 2E. Hence, that's why I call my project To Empower. Many of these people are very effective in masking their neurodiversity. I actually wasn't diagnosed until my late 40s, and actually after that, this is when I've done the research and I've really sort of got an understanding of my personal sort of strengths and weaknesses. And I realized, how much did I mask for many years? In fact, that now, most of my sort of family and colleagues don't actually believe that I'm neurodiverse. They're like, oh, what's she on about? Anyway, and lots of these people are undiagnosed at some point in higher education or at work. So To Empower project was developed to really start to celebrate neurodiversity in the context of STEM subjects, to make STEM really accessible for these students throughout their entire education, to enable neurodiverse students to fulfill their potential in their STEM subjects. So this first started off, very lucky to collaborate with Dr. Susan Smith, who had expertise in teaching twice exceptional students. And she came over to the UK and worked with some fantastic teachers that I have been working with over many years. And I'm sure these are really key for us in universities to be able to do great outreach. We really need these committed teachers that go above and beyond. And these two have been amazing. Carmony and Vargani have been amazing in helping with this project. And what we did was we started to develop some bespoke workshops for students. So as I say, I've done outreach, I've done all these sort of workshops. So we thought, okay, how do we take something that we would normally do for a whole group of mixed students and now make it bespoke for autistic students, or make it bespoke for students with dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD. And so we worked, and in fact at this time I was very, it's strange how things happen, isn't it? And Sienna actually contacted me, Sienna Castleton, who's going to be speaking later in the conference, and at that time she was interested in doing a sort of STEM project. Anyway, we talked and I was telling her about this project, and so she got involved, and she was great because it was great having an autistic person to help design the environment and to make sure that every little detail we'd thought about in terms of how to make these students feel really comfortable and safe. And so, for example, with the autistic students, we had the red and the green badges that they could wear if they did or didn't want to be talked to. And just very things, you can see the room here, we have all the blinds down. We've taken the chameleon and all the things that are normally in our outreach teaching lab out of there. So we have minimal distractions, everything that we could do, we did. And then we got the professors in to teach these students. So here we have our professor in pure mathematics who is teaching these autistic students. And so when you have a professor teaching a student, they can stretch them. And it's just amazing to see. The other thing, this is a colleague of mine, Sunday, who I've worked with for many years doing outreach. We do them particularly for the BAME students. This was a civil engineering workshop, and this one I love because we had the dyslexic students here and we thought, right, let's see if they're entrepreneurs. So rather than just giving them a design with balsa wood and glue guns, what we decided to do was we made a menu and we said to the students, okay, so you're going to get $200 each. And this is, you can use this $200 to buy information on what the sort of ideal bridge structure is, or you can use it to buy, the glue guns, the glue, the balsa wood, etc. And they were in small groups. And what happened, which was an absolute delight for me, was that one of these groups of students saw, and they thought, right, they used all their money to buy the glue guns. So they then suddenly had a monopoly on the glue guns. And that meant that every other group had to then come to them to buy, to be able to use the glue guns for so many minutes. And at the end of that activity, you had some students that had built these beautiful bridges, but then you had this group that hadn't even bothered building the bridge, but they had money sort of stuck all over them. And they were so excited by the fact that they'd won because they made the most money. And there we'd sort of managed to uncover, our entrepreneurs, and we were really excited. So what I'm doing is working with people now and developing different workshops. So we've got astrophysics workshop and other ones One of the things we found was that these students travel a long way to come to our workshops, and some of them had never been to London before, but they were so excited about coming to Imperial and to do a workshop, and the parents were just so excited. So I didn't mention we ran alongside the workshop for the students, we ran parallel workshop for the parents. And it was a great way for parents to network. And the comments we got back from students and parents for doing those workshops were just way exceeded anything that we've had for any other workshops that I've ever done. So it was really, really rewarding. So at the moment we've got funding from Royal Academy of Engineering, we're working with the National Computing Museum at Bletchley Park, and we are developing another workshop. Now, it was going to be face-to-face, but times are such that we are now developing this remotely. We're really excited. We're going to be running this on the 12th of December. It's going to be a lot of, it's called the Enigma to Empower Workshop. So this is going to be just for autistic students. So we're really looking forward to that. One of the other things we started and we sadly had to sort of abandon was a project we had with much younger pupils from in Camden in London, and we started working with them, and they were a complete delight. I mean, we had these students in years 5, 6, so they're sort of age 10 or 11, and we were extracting DNA from strawberries and everything. And yeah, the questions that they came out with were just amazing. I mean, just off the top of my head, do aliens have DNA? So incredible. So one of the when we were doing one of these workshops, one of the parents was asking me, well, what do you do at Imperial? What do you do to accommodate for these students, and how do you treat them, and how, and I suddenly, that really sort of took me aback, and I thought, yeah, I'm there, but I haven't really thought that. And I went back, and obviously because I'm a professor, I've got my research, but I also do a lot of teaching, and I have my own masters in genes, drugs and stem cells. And so I'm looking at the masters, and then I'm going to talk to people in the education unit and people in the disability service and saying, okay, guys, we need to be doing something. Luckily, we had developed this inclusive teaching strategy a few years back at Imperial. And so we were able to apply for some internal funding to actually start a project which is about making teaching inclusive at Imperial. For these students with specific learning differences. And so one of the things we're doing is going around giving a lot of talks, raising awareness to other academics about the differences, because most academics are completely unaware, even though probably a lot of them are neurodiverse, but just have never had a diagnosis. We provide Imperial has invested in a lot of free assistive technologies. And I think this is the key about being inclusive and universal design. We invested in the assistive technologies such that we could give that to all staff and all students. And then we give training on it. And for students, we advertise that training as study efficiency training. And if you imagine some of these students that are using that, we have a lot of international students. So when we're offering, SpellX or something like Grammarly, that's great for international students just as much as it is for the dyslexic students. So we're not really, we want to make this available for everybody. And we're obviously making our teaching materials accessible, giving them in different formats and things like that. But the main thing is getting back to assessment, because as you might have gathered, I've got this bit of a bugbear about exams. So I did something quite radical last year and took the exams out of my master's course. And this caused a lot of problems, with other people sort of involved in running the masters. But anyway, we do have problems. Exams and extended essays are a major problem for students if they're, for example, dyslexic, dyspraxic. And so what we did was replace the exams with multiple authentic assessments. And one of those was grant writing, obviously data analysis. We did public engagement as an activity. We did, creating a graphical abstract of a research article, because that's something you have to be able to do now. So if you read a research article, you have to write an executive summary, and you also have to be able to write create a graphical abstract. So we are changing the way we're assessing. It was super successful last year. The students loved it. They felt like they came out with better skills. They were obviously didn't have the stress, and because we were in COVID year, it was great because we weren't running around trying to, see how we could do exams remotely, etc. So as I say, assistive technologies, there's something, these are a few of the ones that we are investing. MindView, this just shows you, this is just one of my students and their projects, but, this is the way my brain works. It's sort of, everything is networked, and I don't see things in a linear way. And so for the science research projects, I get the students to create MindView, mind maps, or any sort of mind map, because then they have the experience, and it makes, because one of the barriers for this is students not making the time to learn the software, even though the software can be really easy to use. I can use it, so easy for anyone. And so once we've got them over that, and we've got them all sort of using mind maps, they can then choose, no, this isn't for me, or this really helps me. And the great thing for any of you that haven't worked with a mind map is that you create it like this, but then at a single button, it will transform into your Word document. So the other thing that I've been doing, sort of that has evolved as part of this project, I've been talking about it in other universities, to research institutes, to learner societies, and to some STEM businesses. And what I've been doing is about raising the issue of neurodiversity in the STEM workplace. And this is about thinking about the employer experience. So, because at a university, we have employers and employees the same as anywhere else. So it's thinking, okay, it's not just thinking about, okay, we have to consider this when we're educating students. You have to consider this because, some of your academics are neurodiverse, some of your admin staff are neurodiverse. So how do we all get along? And so, this is in that way, we're thinking about it in the context of a workplace. And so one of the things is getting and helping some of these STEM industries to develop their networks, their staff networks. And this is one thing that we've done at Imperial. And because, I'm one of those people, I can't just be satisfied with doing anything by halves. So because I now have collaborators, as I would, across all the sort of local institutes, so within the Royal College of Art, the Royal College of Music, and the V&A, my favourite museum in London. So I have collaborators within those institutes that are all neurodiverse, surprise, surprise. And so what we have done is to set up a staff and student network, and for allies as well. And so we had just started this, and we had planned to do some face-to-face really fun activities, but obviously we were restricted now with lockdown. So we are having a series of networking events, and our next one will be on Wednesday, in a couple of days. So this is very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to some of the collaborative projects that are going to come out of this. And for example, one of the things that we are hoping, the reason we have a staff and a student network, is we will hope that we will help be the role models for those students, but we want to learn from those students. So at the moment, they're great. We'll be able to ask those students about remote working and what works for them and what doesn't, and how we need to modify things for them. we can also have really interesting conversations with our colleagues at the Royal College of Art in terms of how they assess creativity. I mean, one of the things that they do, which I am trying to sort of push Imperial towards, is that they use multiple ways of assessing something. So, for example, at the end of term, if you don't have to just write a written dissertation, you could put it in the form of a video, or you could create an oral presentation. So I think the idea of being able to have assessments that match your strengths is really the way forward. And so we all accept that, you know, we have challenges. If, you know, it's undoubtedly, you know, and the word that I forgot right at the beginning that obviously came to me halfway through this speech was imposter syndrome. So I was thinking, yes, I am a professor and I'm sitting here sort of as the embodiment of imposter syndrome. So, sorry. Oops. Oh, I've frozen now. So I'm just going to continue. Sorry, Lawrence, can you tell me if you can hear me or somebody speak? Because
Yes, we can hear you. You can
hear me,
continue.
but you can't see me. But I'm just about to wrap up now. I just had the final slide was just sort of showing really how this outreach project. So some people, and especially scientists in the UK, tend to be a bit sniffy about the sort of value of doing outreach. I think it's incredibly important. I really want to try and get, you know, all these neurodiverse young people. I want to, you know, encourage them into STEM. I think the future could be STEM for them. And yeah, just to show how that this has led to many more collaborative projects and interesting avenues for me to explore. And I'm also really interested in doing some real research about the sort of lived experience of neurodiverse scientists. So yeah, I just end there. But if you are a neurodiverse scientist, please connect with me.
Thank you, Sarah. And I have a feeling you're going to get some interest in the connection just from some of the comments that I've seen already. So thank you for just a fascinating presentation. And there's so many pieces of it. I sort of was thinking about this evolution of outreach that you've done from starting with baking and then evolving into these bespoke workshops. Is just amazing transformation and evolution over the years. So let me jump into some questions for you. And one is related to those workshops. There's a question, are there plans to expand the bespoke workshops for mature students?
Ooh, for mature students, we haven't considered that yet, to be honest, because we obviously still trying to raise funds just to do the ones for the you know, for the younger students. So we're doing it really you know, the idea for me is to do them for students that are in what we call primary school, and then for students in secondary school before they go into university. But we haven't considered doing things. Hopefully we would have some workshops. So we're hoping to have activities, things like hackathons that we do with our students when we have our students from the Royal College of Art, Royal College of Music and Imperial. You know, I just can't wait to do some projects with all those neurodiverse students and staff.
Wonderful. On the topic of connection, we do have several questions about how can people connect with you?
Oh, well, my Twitter is just there. It's @RankinProf. But yeah, just look me up. You'll find my email very easily on, if you just search me, and just drop me an email.
Okay, that sounds great. And how about, we have another question here about, are there opportunities for neurodiverse or autistic United States citizens to go to graduate school at Imperial?
Oh yeah, yeah. We have a lot of grad students from the US. Yeah, we have a lot of international students at Imperial. So yeah, there's lots of
It is a
opportunities, and we
wonderful.
have people that come on our master's courses, for example, if they're grad students and PhD students. So yeah.
Okay. And in some of the facts and figures that you gave, do you have facts and figures on specifically female experiences or rates of females in STEM fields?
Are we talking about neurodiverse females?
I believe so. I believe that's what the question was
Yeah,
referring to.
no, and I think it's really hard to actually get any of this information, but it's something that I'm intending to look at Imperial. I mean, I went to a great one-day conference in Cardiff. Name's gone. Oh. And I was, yeah, about the sorts of gender differences between things like ADHD and autism. So yeah, I think that's a really fascinating area. So yeah, something definitely to consider.
Mhm. Okay, we have a question here. I'm currently attending school with the goal of finding work that combines sustainability with creativity. Do you know of neurodiverse scientists who are doing that kind of work?
Yeah, we actually have a group at Imperial. I mean, we have a lot of areas that are around sustainability, and we have a specific group. If they email me, I can send the details. But they do a lot of citizen science, and again, bringing creativity into that. But I think, if you look at myself, I'm a scientist, but I'm very creative. I was one of those people in school, I could have gone either way, but I wanted to cure cancer. But yeah, that never happened. So, but anyway, but I've used my creativity in other ways. So I can still apply my creativity. I apply it actually in the design of my experiments and the type of things that I do. A lot of the things are very innovative, or blue sky, as people would put it. But also, I'm drawn to arts, and I always work with artists on all my outreach projects. So, I do have the opportunity to get involved in other sort of, so I feel, because I need that, it's part of who I am creative.
Absolutely. And it is, yeah, many fields have creativity built into them that you don't, not necessarily obvious on the outside. So there are a couple questions here in terms of parents and engaging kids. The first one is there a playbook or resources for parents teaching kids at home for STEM?
No, what a great idea. I mean, there are zillions for STEM activities. So you can go on the internet and you can find loads. What there isn't is, how do you adapt them for your student, for that particular student that, maybe has an aversion to sticking their fingers in, I don't know, unidentified substances, or making slime or things like that. I mean, those are the sort of things we had to consider when we were dealing with the primary school kids. So I think it's, yes, knowing how to adapt the activities to make them work
Mm-hmm.
for young kids. I don't think that exists as such.
And there was a follow-up question that may have the same answer, but it was about content for middle school neurodiverse girls for STEM that aligns with their coursework in school.
Geez, yes. I mean, yeah. I mean, there is, as I say, there are lots of there's lots of content, but what the sort of the unique thing of our workshops was having the whole, and it was great for the students to actually feel normal. There were, students with ADHD that weren't, they were allowed to get up and move. When we were doing the workshop with the dyslexic and dyspraxic and ADHD, we did a whole what we called physics busking, and we got them to, rather than reading anything, everything was sort of, visual, and we had experiments that they had to work out how the experiment worked and set it up, and then what was the impact of it, or what did it mean, and they had to present that in an interesting sort of way, actually back to their parents at a later time in the workshop, so that they could just be moving around the whole time and chatting the whole time and not being told off. I mean, it's just something as simple as that, which is pretty sad, isn't it, if it comes to it. But the fact that they all sort of swapped their sort of contact details with each other, so that parents networked, the students networked. And the other great thing is, when I bring in professors to teach these students, they are a bit sort of, had their minds sort of opened a bit, because they realize, the strengths, and they see them as a whole group, they really sort of notice maybe their sort of differences, and so it's a learning experience from them for them as well.
Mm-hmm. And we're continuing to have questions about just this whole range from younger kids, middle school, around connecting and learning. And we have another question here: is, are there internship programs for someone who graduated already from university?
An internship?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by internship? Is that somebody wanting to come and work at Imperial, or is it, what?
Yeah, that's a good question. It might mean something different in the UK. I'm not sure. Typically, an internship in the US is a program for students. It's short term. It's meant to provide people with experience, but it's not technically a job. It's more considered sort of part of a extended learning, where people go into the workplace as sort of a student learner. I'm not sure what the equivalent would be.
We have something at Imperial called Europe. Well, that's undergraduate research placements. For graduates, not that I know of. We have it definitely for undergraduates that come and work in the summer. I'm not aware for graduates.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a question here about chemistry demonstrations. And I think the question is relating to, while some of these demonstrations, and I think you touched on it a little bit in terms of how did you modify some of these activities that you did in your workshops, but it was a question kind of along those lines, that there are these chemistry demonstrations that might be engaging and interesting, but are also terrifying to some. And how do you go about modifying some of those, or making them more accessible?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is and I think for me, it's running these workshops makes it very clear that if I'm running one with students that are dyslexic, they love that. They love things that go bang. They love the and they love us sort of changing things at the last minute, or surprises and etc. And then I have the polar opposite if I have students that are autistic, and I'm trying to make sure we keep exactly to time and do exactly what we say and pre-warn them. And so if we were going to do anything like that, I think it would just be a case of, we would say explicitly, right, we are going to do this, there will be a large bang at the end, there will be a strange smell, if you are going to be uncomfortable with this, stand away or stand outside the room, come in afterwards, we'll video it, you can watch, it's just that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, preparing people is a big piece of the big piece of it. Yeah. So a next comment is thank you, Sarah, and it continues. I have ADHD and work for a nonprofit in the U.S. Employers in the States want autistic candidates. How can we convince them that neurodiverse, dyslexic, ADHD, etc., have skills too?
How can you convince who? The employers?
The employers, yeah, I think that was the question.
Well, this is why I guess I'm using my position as a professor now to sort of go into STEM businesses and challenge them a bit on this, because to sort of say, okay, this is me, and this will be also some of your employers here, even though they haven't. And I think that's the main thing, is taking away the stigma, because these people are lying, are not lying, but they are in organizations already. There are lots of people like myself that didn't really realize that they were neurodiverse. And there are people that know they are neurodiverse, and they're just masking it because it's got such a sort of negative stigma. And so one of the things has been really great. I've been going into AstraZeneca and GSK, and there are senior scientists there that are coming out and saying, yes, this is me as well. And that's really important for younger employers to see. And that's what I really hope will happen, is that there will be more people like myself, because it's fine having, role models like Stephen Hawkins and Steve Jobs, but, that's not sort of the average sort of professor or academic. And so we just want, STEM professionals, people that are, scientists that are neurodiverse, just to talk more about that. I mean, it's almost, celebrated in the creative fields, because so many creative people and famous creative people and people living creative people are neurodiverse, and they sort of acknowledge it, whereas it's very tough getting scientists to actually come out and talk about their neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think we have time for one last question. And this one is just related to research. And this person is saying they're not having luck finding research article studies on ADHD, dyslexia, and autism on the commonalities, and was wondering if you had thoughts on that, or had places where you were finding research or particular research suggestions.
I think you probably got other people that could answer that much better than myself, to be honest, at this conference.
All right, that sounds great. Well, thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. I'm sure we'll have that last question. Some of the other sessions, I imagine that we'll have people who can speak to that, but it was absolutely fascinating, and so such a pleasure to have you here and sharing everything that you are doing. And I will turn it over to Dr. Fung now, who will let us know what's coming up next.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for the invite. And it's amazing to hear all the really impressive work that everybody else is doing. And, you know, really the companies and Stanford with their whole neurodiversity project. I mean, that's just incredible. So it's, you know, I think everybody is, you know, there is we're on a sort of good trajectory, it seems. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sarah. And we'll be partners on different continents. And yeah, collectively, we can do much more. So looking forward to continuing our conversation. Thank you for the presentation.
I am going to have to just shut my computer off because I can't exit the screen. So I'm hoping it won't do anything horrible to you,
that's fine. So
okay.
we will, yeah, we'll see you some other time. Take care. So for everyone else that's in the conference right now, if you're signed up for a networking session, please, you can end your webinar and then enter your own Zoom link if you already have one. Check your email for detailed instructions. If there are any changes by the speaker, they will send the emails to you directly. And for everyone else that's not going to networking session, please have lunch. This is lunchtime. And we'll be back at 1 o'clock for our employer session with 5 very experienced executives in the Autism at Work and Neurodiversity at Work initiatives. So we'll see you soon at 1 o'clock.